The U.S. military and Congress are now actively investigating unidentified anomalous phenomena. The discussion relies heavily on sensor data, like what Navy targeting systems captured here. The prevailing assumption across the public and media is the extraterrestrial hypothesis. We see an unknown object in the sky, and we deduce it must be a physical spacecraft piloted by biological beings from another planet. Dr. Jacques Vallée represents the definitive counterargument to that assumption. He occupies a unique space in this field, widely considered a heretic by rigid skeptics and true believers alike. His credentials do not fit the profile of a fringe theorist. As a professional astronomer, he co-developed the first computerized map of Mars for NASA in 1963. Moving into computer science, he worked at SRI International as a staff engineer under Douglas Engelbart. There, he helped architect Planet, the very first conferencing and chat system on the ARPANET, the direct precursor to the modern Internet. Someone who builds the informational architecture for global communication evaluates data differently. Vallée recognized early on that interpreting these phenomena strictly as interplanetary spacecraft ignores critical data points, resulting in a systemic failure of analysis. His distrust of institutional narratives began in 1961, during his tenure as a rigorously trained astronomer at the Paris Observatory. His team tracked an unknown satellite in a retrograde orbit, moving in the opposite direction of the Earth's rotation. Based on the physics and launch capabilities of 1961, no human space program possessed a rocket powerful enough to place a satellite into that specific trajectory. It was an objective, trackable anomaly. Rather than analyze the anomaly, a superior ordered them to destroy the tracking tapes. The data was erased to avoid the inconvenience of explaining it. This perfectly illustrates how academic institutions often suppress outliers. When raw data contradicts the accepted model, the establishment deletes the data instead of revising the model. Experiencing this erasure firsthand drove Vallée to investigate what he termed forbidden science. He understood that genuine discoveries are hidden within the exact data points that institutional science chooses to throw away. In the mid-1960s, Vallée collaborated closely with Dr. J. Allen Hynek, the chief scientific consultant for the U.S. Air Force's Project Blue Book. At that time, Vallée actively attempted to validate the extraterrestrial model. By 1969, the data forced him to pivot. He formalized this shift in a 1990 paper outlining 5 specific arguments against the extraterrestrial origin. We can map his reasoning on a 5-part matrix to see exactly where the popular theory fails. This first section illustrates the volume problem. The sheer mathematical density of global close encounters statistically overwhelms any logical model for a planetary scientific survey. A civilization mapping Earth does not need millions of atmospheric incursions to gather samples. Moving to the second section, we see the biological contradiction. The ubiquitous humanoid shape of reported entities makes zero evolutionary sense. Bipedal, oxygen-breathing humanoids would not independently evolve in a completely alien planetary biosphere. The third section charts reported entity behavior. Instead of disciplined scientific protocols, interactions with human subjects are absurd, chaotic, and dreamlike. This contradicts the hypothesis of systematic genetic or biological experimentation by an advanced race. The fourth section tracks the historical timeline. The phenomenon spans recorded human history, seamlessly adapting its aesthetic to the cultural expectations of the era. Witnesses saw elves and fairies in antiquity, mysterious airships in the 1890s, and metallic saucers in the atomic age. Finally, the fifth section illustrates physical capabilities. Reports describe craft materializing instantly, merging into one another, and moving without acceleration. These actions suggest the localized manipulation of space-time, not mechanical propulsion. When subjected to rigorous data science, the interplanetary spacecraft model collapses under its own contradictions. The evidence demands a completely different physical framework. Vallée's alternative framework is known as the interdimensional hypothesis. The core premise is that these phenomena do not traverse the vacuum of space from distant star systems. Instead, they originate from environments or realities that exist directly adjacent to our own. This hypothesis elegantly resolves the physics problem. An object stepping into our dimension from an adjacent space would appear to materialize instantly, bypass light speed limitations, and ignore local inertia. Given his background designing the ARPANET, Vallée conceptualized this like a computational network. Just as discrete local networks can intersect to share information, parallel realities might possess overlapping points of access. The interdimensional hypothesis shifts the phenomenon from a solid object moving through our universe to an intersection of realities. Studying this requires an entirely different methodology than tracking a conventional aerospace vehicle. Moving beyond localized physics, Vallée examined the sociological purpose of the phenomenon. He identified a mechanism he calls the control system. The theory posits that the phenomenon acts as an informational interface. Over centuries, it has systematically manipulated human belief, reinforcing or dismantling societal myths through strategic appearances. Vallée notes a chameleon effect. The control system deliberately presents itself exactly one step ahead of our current technological understanding, maintaining an aura of mystery while forcing human logic to adapt. This intent sharply contrasts with the extraterrestrial model. The intelligence behind these events is not here to passively study human civilization, it is actively conditioning it. The phenomenon operates like an environmental conditioning mechanism. It treats human culture and collective consciousness as an operating system, periodically running updates through these high-strangeness encounters. Today, public disclosure efforts fixate almost entirely on crashed hardware. Vallée, however, has spent decades meticulously studying the physical trace anomalies left at landing sites. He focuses on granular material details, like the anomalous metallic slag and molten isotopic structures recovered from historical events like the 1945 Trinity site. His focus on exact, verifiable data makes his recent claims in 2024 and 2025 particularly jarring. He recently disclosed knowledge of a deeply classified U.S. program initiated 20 years ago. According to Vallée, the government successfully established direct, structured communications with a non-human intelligence. This diagram represents the kind of structured data exchange Vallée describes. He states these communications occurred in a controlled laboratory setting, effectively validating his control system theory as a tangible, interactive mechanism. Laboratory-based communication implies a cohabiting intelligence. It proves the phenomenon is a two-way informational exchange, not a one-sided observation by distant aliens. Jacques Vallée's scientific trajectory is entirely unique. He began his career mapping the early infrastructure of the Internet and applied that exact same rigor to mapping the informational structure of reality. His multidimensional framework exposes the alien threat narrative currently driving government disclosure as simplistic and scientifically narrow. The philosophical implication of his life's work is severe. Our current models of physics, linear time, and consciousness are vastly incomplete. He remains the heretic among heretics because his data demands a total revision of our worldview. We have to stop looking up at the sky for metallic spaceships and start recognizing that we exist inside a highly engineered environment.